to the world, blessings and peace. Liturgical light in a cultural space. Cutting through the clutter is David L. Gray. In pursuit of truth, the Dominican way. From war into the world, blessings and peace. Liturgical light in a cultural space. Cutting through the clutter is David L. Gray. In pursuit of truth, the Dominican way.
It's David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please.
From war into the world, blessings and peace. Liturgical light in a cultural space. Cutting through the clutter, it's David L. Gray. In pursuit of truth, the Dominican way.
It's David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please.
From war into the world, blessings and peace. Liturgical light in a cultural space. Cutting through the clutter, it's David L. Gray. In pursuit of truth, the Dominican way.
Is David L. Gray. Welcome into the show. Glad you're here. I told you that I may be back this week after our Monday live stream. I didn't know I'll be back and asking for you to pray for people who are suffering due to the school shooting, church shooting, really, in Minneapolis. Or that I'd be asking you to pray for the souls of faithfully departed. Didn't expect that. But I'm here. I want to talk about this and do a little something different than I think what a lot of people are talking about right now. So thanks for coming in. And of course, I got to say hey to my friends real quick. Everyone who's here, especially Brianna, Diana. So thanks guys for always, Diane, thanks for always being here. Appreciate it. So I want to do something a little different, like I said. I want to get into really the profile of these killers and what's going on with them psychologically, spiritually, and why they do this. And in particular, why is Gen Z, those who are born in the late 90s into the early 2000s, why are they they're leaning into this? And this isn't going to be an easy take, not at all. When it comes to things that lead to these types of events, there's isolation, there's suffering, there's depression, there's the victim mentality that we've been talking a lot about here lately. But there's really a thin line between those who are suffering through those things, between those who decide to act out on that feeling just to get it over with by harming themselves, either physical abuse, suicide, or those who decide to harm others. It's a very thin line. And we're going to get into the psychology of that. But let's start with just the fast facts. If you are just catching up to this, let's just go through what's happened, what we know right now. So August 27th, 2025, 23-year-old Robin Westman, who was born Robert Paul Westman. He opened fire during a morning mass at the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, killing 2 children ages 8 and 10 and injuring 17 others, including 14 more children, and 3 elderly parishioners. Westman was a former student at that school, and he fired dozens of rounds through the church windows before taking his own life. Authorities recovered a disturbing manifesto that I'll show you a video. I'll show the video to you in a moment of this manifesto and the weapons they confirmed on the scene, and they're discovering more weapons. Turns out they were legally purchased as well. The shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis occurred during, like I said, the opening mass of the academic year. So this is the Catholic schools have the opening mass. So that's the tragedy, one of the biggest tragedies that's happened today. There are students there from pre-K all the way through 8th grade that gathered there for their opening mass of the school year. So the timing of the tragedy is even more devastating. What makes that thing even more devastating is that this is really a moment that was supposed to be for spiritual renewal. And that's what the opening mass of the Catholic school year is about: spiritual renewal, the community coming together, teachers, parents. Everyone's looking forward to a new school year, what they're going to learn, relationships they're going to build, the community that they're going to foster together. It's a joyous occasion, and it's just shattered by violence coming through from the outside of the church. As one local priest put it, at a time when young hearts were turned toward the Lord in prayer, violence entered the sanctuary. Again, Robin was born Robert Paul Westman, according to court records. And the name change to Robin, from Robert to Robin, occurred in 2020, about 5 years ago, when Westman was just 17 years old, on the tail end of high school. In the application in the court, we see it was filed by his mother, stating that Westman identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification. So the name Robin was adopted as part of Westman's transition to putting on woman face. However, the manifesto in a personal writing suggests that his gender dysphoria was still in flux. It wasn't settled. It was still a conflict, unstable. He made one statement that says, "I know I am not a woman, but I definitely don't feel like a man." So he says, "I know I'm not a woman. I get that, but I definitely don't feel like a man." So let's go ahead from here and let's go ahead and get into some of the good takes and the bad takes. But first, I'm going to show you the video of his manifesto. So let's get into that real quick. This is David O'Gray.
Note to my family and shit. Wow, some English writing. Wow. Hope you can.
So you can find this video online, or you can pause it here and just kind of read. It's a really moving letter. Actually, I was really conflicted reading it, because throughout it he's apologizing. He's saying that, "Hey, mom, dad, you didn't do anything wrong. You love me, you raised me." And he just says, I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Something's wrong with me. And he's saying sorry. And he's saying, just forget about me. Just move on and raise my brothers and sisters. Then he apologizes to his brothers and sisters, saying, "I'm sorry for like harassing you and bullying you and all this stuff, and sorry for taunting you." And then he says, "Pray for those who I'm about to harm." And it's really just an open confession of just his brokenness, his loneliness, his isolation, all these things he said he's feeling and he's going through that he can never find a resolution to.
Read that. Yeah. Peace, love, unity, and guns. Baka, my brata.
Yeah, and so I'm not going to show you what happens next after the video. You know, you can watch it on your own. You can find it over next. But after this, it's really conflicting. It's like this weird paradox. You know, he's apologized and he's saying he's sorry in his letter. He took time to write this whole confession about who he is as a person, how he feels, and how he's broken. And then he turns to all these guns that he's going to use the next day, what he's going to wear. And as much time as he took to write this letter apologizing for what he's about to do and telling his parents he didn't do anything wrong, they didn't do anything wrong in raising him. He then turns to these guns that he spent as much time writing on people's names, inflammatory statements. You know, he's talking about Jews. Just a couple of times he writes nigga on guns and on this stick. So you can tell so in the letter, he's sorry. I'm broken. I'm wounded. I can't be fixed. Then on the guns, he has his victim identity. Everything on the victim says everything on his weapons and his sticks and everything, his clothes. I'm a victim of the world. So, and like he says in his manifesto, it's like the world broke him. Like he bought into all this stuff that the world was feeding him. That's kind of what I'm getting from it, right? Some people say, "Oh man, he's schizophrenic. Maybe the letter is one person, and what he's writing on the guns is another person." Listen, I don't know. He's dead. But it's a conflict. What's going on here? So, but ultimately, yeah, he wants. But also, it was going on is that he wants to be remembered, right? He wants to be remembered fondly by the people who loved him. While at the same time, he's about to go do something where a lot of people are going to hate him. It's weird. I never experienced anything like this. So, but let's go ahead and get into. So I want to show you that. But now I want to go ahead and get into some of the good takes and the bad takes about this whole thing. So let's get into that next. This is David O'Gray. Hey, I'm David O'Gray. If you are enjoying this podcast, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also hit that join button so you can receive access to early releases of many of my videos and also have access to my entire archive going all the way back to 2011. Thank you. Hey, this is David O'Gray. So there's some points of convergence I've noticed in some of the people that I've been watching or reading their transcripts because it's a lot faster about this whole thing, whether it's news, whether it's like, you know, the talking heads. I know there's some points of convergence, especially from some more traditional minded Catholics on this. I think there's a point, and I'll get into the bad takes first. Things on the bad takes is just, or I wouldn't say bad, maybe the wrong word, but more like conventional wisdom, you know, just the common group think, the things you expect to hear, nothing new, right? Just the same old. Every time there's something like this happens, we hear the same thing. Just like tomorrow, you're going to hear Democrats and some Republicans talking about, hey, we need to take away guns from people. It's just the common things you always hear. And here's some of them. The shooter's gender dysphoria and violent actions are really symptoms of the broader cultural collapse. So they say, oh, the cultural collapse is the reason why he has gender dysphoria and a reason why, he went on the action he did. And and people want to try to, I know some people linking this to some sort of, some weird theology and moral relativism. That's I think that's a bad take, right? Or it's really nothing new there, nothing fresh, nothing we could really do anything with. Another bad take is that, here goes another trans person. They're out to get Catholics. They keep shooting the schools up. So, and again, I think that type of thing plays into what I've been talking about lately about the whole victim identity, the whole grievance thing that I think is unhealthy for us to take, in particular as Catholics, for us to take. Like, oh, we're victims to trans. We're victims. They're out to get us. They're out to shoot us. Let's hide our wife, hide our kids. That type of thing. It's an easy take. All right. Another easy take that he's mentally ill. Another easy take, I think, is the whole parent take. I think there's something there, but again, it's something that we always hear. Let's point at the parents. It's their fault. The shooter's dead. Let's find somebody to blame. It's the parents. Let's blame the parents. So it's mom's fault, right? All right. It's her fault for, letting him get his name changed, buying into his gender dysphoria. She had to know about the guns, all this stuff. Where did he get the money from? This whole critique on parental permissiveness, right? How far how permissive can you be as a parent, right? So that's that take. And that, again, they're saying, oh, that led to the spiritual downfall. The guys who like to talk about the patriarchy. Where's dad at? Why is he live with mom? Where's dad? The whole critique of men not fulfilling their role. Maybe there's something there, but again, it's not anything new. There's another take. I think so. I read this at Taylor Marshall. I saw him talking about this. And he was really describing this again within the framework of the grievance narrative and the victims. That, this is a larger war against Christianity. That's what he was saying. He even quoted President Trump's tweet that he used in reference to something else that wasn't relative to this. He quoted Trump saying, "This is a war on Christianity, right? They're attacking Catholics. They're coming for us." Again, the grievance narrative, easy. We can make a million videos like that. They're not hard. It's very easy to be a victim and say everyone's out to get you. Can't really do anything with it. It just makes people mad. It makes them feel powerless. Gives them a new grievance. It makes them suspicious, makes them not trust their neighbor, So I really don't like that. Saw another take saying, oh, this is, your children aren't safe anywhere, not even in Catholic schools. All right, so homeschool your kids, keep them safe there, like as if. Right. I don't. There's dangers everywhere. I work on a military base, right, in a foreign country, in Germany. And just recently, a kid got hit by a car, like a hit and run, and a parent person kept going. Now, I think they checked on the kid, like, "Hey, you're okay?" And the kid said, "Yeah," and that's it. They sped off on a military base. So, I mean, this is like the most gated type of community in the world. I'm talking about a gated community, and kids aren't safe anywhere. So I don't. Again, I think that's a lazy take. Again, homeschooling has merits. Keeping your kids safe from harm. I don't want any parent thinking that that's why I should homeschool, to keep my kids safe from danger. I don't think that's the way. I like one take by Taylor Marshall. I thought this is a good take. He spent a lot of time in his video talking about Catholic, the teaching on martyrdom. I thought that was beneficial. And he's even suggesting that Pope Leo XIV canonize the victim as saints, comparing them to the holy innocents killed by Herod. Probably going a little bit too far there, right? But I like the idea of this thing happens in Nigeria all the time, in other parts of Africa. This is just, it's nothing new here. You're at mass, people come in and shoot you, or they shoot you from the outside. This is the way people live in other countries. Okay. Different for the United States. We don't experience this a lot. Other parts of the world do. Honduras, other places, right? This life. But the fact that, yeah, someone's at mass and they get killed while they're at mass, yeah, let's perhaps, yes, they are martyrs in a way, passive martyrs. Yeah, maybe they should be made saints. So I kind of like that take. I didn't like the take that people are saying, oh, maybe he's demonically possessed. I saw on X a guy talking about, oh, I listened to the video and I heard like 4 or 5 different voices. I listened to the video too. And yeah, the guy was making noises and grunts and things like that. I don't know if he's speaking in demonic tongues. I don't know, right? So I don't know about the whole demonic possession thing. Because school shooting, we're talking more about this, it's premeditated. It's something that you think about for a long time and you plan for a long time. This guy, Robin, he had drawings of the church. This whole thing is, so I don't know about demonic possession. I don't know if demons premeditate like that. I don't know. So I don't know about that take. All right. Yeah, some of his weapons and stuff, you can say, oh, they look satanic. Even the way he spelled out the word nigga, it was kind of like weird. Like, but I've seen this when I was in high school, kids write things in strange ways. So I don't know about this demonic possession thing. Definitely evil. Influenced by a demon, oppressed, probably possessed. Sacramental thing, and I don't even know if a demon would kill themselves. I don't know if demons commit suicide because the demon still wants a host. So I don't know about that. But yeah, those are some of the good takes and bad takes. I thought about this whole thing. So, but what I want to do now is get into something I think is interesting, something that I think is, a different way to look at this. I want to get into the psychology of the school shooter, of the transgender person, the woman-faced person. Why does this keep happening? Why is it these type of people? There have been a lot of them, and I'll go over them lately. And are they different than just the typical young white male school shooter, that typical profile? Is the woman-faced one different, or there's similarities? I'm gonna go over that. Then I'm going to talk about Gen Z. Why is Gen Z going this way? What are some things going on in the culture that makes Gen Z prone to violence and suicide and things like that? And then, of course, we're going to wrap this up, speaking about Christ and really the resolution to this. So let me take a quick water break, and I'll be right back with you. This is David L. Gray.
From war into the world, blessings and peace, liturgical light in a cultural space, cutting through the clutter. It's David L. Gray in pursuit of truth, the Dominican way. It's David L. Gray.
It's David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray.
It's David L. Gray. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. Hit that like, share, and sub if you please. From war into the world, blessings and peace. Liturgical light in the cultural space. Cutting through the clutter is David Del Gray. In pursuit of truth, the Dominican way. It's David L. Gray.
It's David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray.
It's David L. Gray.
Yeah.
Hit that like, share, and so if you please. Hit that like, share, and so if you please.
Is David L. Gray here. So let's go ahead and get into the manifesto and really the profile of these people and why this happens. So we're going to talk about the woman face profile, transgender, so to speak. What's going on with them? Are they any different than really just a typical profile of? Is there something going on here with just the woman face, the transgender male? So let's take a look at them. And you can see here. So I have the incident, the shooter's identity, the year they were born, because we need to talk about that. We need to talk about Gen Z. What's going on here? The year it happened. How many people? All right. So you remember Audrey Hale? That was the Covenant school shooting. So that was a Christian school. I think it was Presbyterian. That person identified transgender, woman face, on the cusp of being Gen Z. There's Alec McKinney, again, transgender male, Gen Z. Sonoshia Mosley, transgender male. More like a millennial, but not deep into millennial. Kind of close to Gen Z. Gen Z, I believe, starts in 97. Anderson Lee, male, identifying as non-binary, right? I have a penis. Doesn't really define me. That type of thing. And now we're at Robin Westman. Again, another Gen Z school shooter. So again, I think the bad take is, okay, the transgenders are out to get us. These people are dangerous, right? Of course, I mean, to be sure, there's something going on there that psychologically, there's a conflict there, right, between a person being biologically one way, but in their mind feeling like they're not that person. It's a conflict. I mean, most people can't even imagine what that is. I mean, a lot of people live like double lives, right? You know, I don't know if you have at one point in time in your life, but that's a conflict. Being one way, presenting yourself one way, but knowing that you're just posing, you're not that person, you're being fake. And maybe you're living a double life. Maybe, you married and committing adultery. That's a double life. Maybe you're extreme with it, being a narcissist. Narcissists are, they're in every church. They usually sit in the front pews. Okay. They need to be seen. All right. They're Eucharistic ministers and lectors. All right. That's really the best way to define them. They need to be seen. They need to be seen as being good. But inside they're completely evil. Okay. So that type of double life is, something a lot of people deal with, but feeling that biologically being like two different persons, feeling that has to be crazy. So yeah, it has to be frustrating. I'm sure there's a pill for that to even calm all the anxiety that comes from that. But aside from that, is the trans shooter so much different than just your typical profile, which is typically a young white male? Actually, no. There's some shared traits between these shooters, those who have gender dysphoria and those who don't. Right? So there's 6 of them here, 6 things that line up, which is scary. Okay, so both of them, whether they're heterosexual or woman face, they both have mental health struggles. Most had documented histories of depression, anxiety, or suicidal ideation. I've been fixated on that. And this is not unique to trans shooters. It's common across many mass shooters. Just depression, anxiety, and feeling suicidal. Alienation. Heterosexuals and trans feel like they're alienated. They're not really part of the world. They're not. They're something else. They're in the world, not of the world. Not in the sense that, Christians would say. So several express being socially isolated or rejected, either by family, peers, or institutions. You see this in Robin's letter to his parents, his manifesto, so to speak. Right? Isolated from institutions. Maybe this is why he goes to the Catholic school that he graduated from. And the other thing is the grievance narrative. The grievance narrative is common with the shooters, no matter how they identify. Manifestos or writings often reveal deep resentment towards specific groups, institutions, for example, religious schools, workplaces, or societies at large. Right. And this is, again, why I find the grievance narrative, this whole victim mentality that people keep pushing out there on people. Oh, the Jews are out to get you, or the blacks are out to get you, or the whites are out to get you. They're just out to get you. The trans are out to get you. You keep feeding these people this stuff. Let's find out what happens. All right. We've seen what happened in World War II. For 500 years, you tell a particular group of people that the Jews are out to get you, that they're bad, they're evil. Then desire for infamy. Right? Like many mass shooters, some sought notoriety or wanted their actions to be remembered. We see that with Robin. We see that with others. Prior trauma or abuse. In some cases, there were reports of childhood trauma, bullying, or abuse. Don't know a whole lot about what's going on with this person, the Minneapolis shooter. I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't bullied in high school. They seem like they could have been. Access to firearms. All had relatively easy access to weapons, often legally obtained. And if you watch the video, this Robin person, had guns galore. He had more guns than I know you'll have on Halo or Navy SEALs or Helldivers 2, whatever first shooter game you're playing. He had all the guns, more guns than anyone else. So no, there is no difference between your typical shooter, heterosexual, and trans. So we can't say, oh, the trans are out to get us. Yeah, it's a deep mental health issue, but they're not more prone to shooting than anyone else. So that's what the data says there. And so across mass shootings, whether committed by heterosexual white males, biological males, and woman face, or males who don't claim to have a particular biological gender, there are shared psychological and social patterns. So again, the common trends cause shooters, mental health issues, social isolation, the grievance narrative, victim narrative. They want to be known and they have access to easy firearms. So, but what's more particularly interesting, you look at some of the numbers, you see this prevalence with Gen Z. Those born after 1997 up until I think 2008 or something like that. What's going on with them? And Um, what's driving their isolation? What's driving their victimhood? We should talk about that because a lot of us, those are your kids, maybe your grandkids, and their suicide numbers are high. They're not very well. They're on medication. I'm not going to paint, there's some positive things about them. I get into that as well. But far too many of them are feeling isolated, depressed, suicidal. They're on medication. And far too many of them have killed each other. So what's going on with Gen Z? So let's take a look at that real quick and see. So some of the core factors driving Gen Z towards isolation and victimhood. Well, first, digital saturation. Just the social media distortion. So Gen Z are what people who like talking about this subject, they use this term called digital natives. All right. So they're meaning the digital space is so digital construct is they were born into it. They're natives to it. Right. So within that framework as well, I remember we just took about a class like this in a doctorate program I'm in at Catholic University of America. We just had a course on this whole thing over the summer. So it's kind of fresh in my head. So yeah, so you have digital natives, and then what are people like us, right? Where you can hold people like my generation, born in '72. I think we're Gen X or something like that. You'll call us digital immigrants, digital foreigners. So you have different people. You have people who are born into it, you people who are coming into it, people who are coming into it late. So, but Gen Z, they're the true digital natives. They've never known life without a smartphone. Imagine that. Life without the internet. They don't know that. So it's a whole different type of experience. So, and not only that, they're born into it, they're used to this just constant exposure to like a curated life. This whole Instagram thing, posting pictures, filters, and presenting yourself one way to the world, but being a different way. All right. You know how people they're used to this idea. This is their whole life. You see people, they have a camera, and everyone smiles. The picture snaps. Everyone goes back to their resting bitch face, right? It's fake, all right, oftentimes. But that's the world that they're born into. All right, there's a fake and there's a reality, a curation. So their online interactions often replace just real world relationships, right? You talk to kids nowadays, right? They don't. There's not a conversation to let's go out and date, right? Hey, can I have your phone number? They don't ask that. They say, hey, um, what's your there's this freaking gnat flying around getting on my nerves. I got this like digital thing here. You guys got the electronic fly swatter? Like cook these babies. But anyway, they have the online interaction. That yeah, so you ask these what I was saying, yeah, these kids, you ask these boys, hey, yeah, you should ask her for a phone number. You like her? Ask her for a phone number. What's that? What's her Instagram? Hey, let me get your IG. Right. In their interactions or like on Instagram or other places, it's not real oftentimes. And so because it's not real, it's not real emotions. And so oftentimes Gen Z, they are slow to develop in their emotions in both positive and negative, having bad emotional experiences, having good emotional experiences, and forming deep connections emotionally. They're slow to develop. Right? They're a little bit behind, a little bit retarded in that whole development. So that's one thing you have to be patient with them, that they don't know how to process emotions. They don't know how to process suffering. They don't know how to process rejection. Right? Gen Z person, graduate from high school, college, get a lot of job rejections. They'll just tap out. They'll be done. And you may know somebody like this. You may know a kid from Gen Z that's sleeping on their parents' couch or sleeping in the basement, not applying for jobs anymore. Why? Because they grew up in this environment where they don't know how to process rejection and suffering, things like that. So, and this leads to the mental health crisis. So Gen Z reports the highest levels of anxiety and depression of any generation. Like I said, Gen Z are taking all the pills. They're just popping all the pills. 70% of teens say mental health is a major issue among their peers. Are you serious? 7 and 10? That's wild. Right? And many feel overwhelmed by the global crisis. And so, yeah, they're saturated by this whole victim narrative. Oh, the Republicans are out to get you. They want to kill the environment. Right? The Jews are out to get you. They want to kill the Palestinians. Right? So much political instability. All these things that really don't affect people in the real world, at least the first world, they worry about. So on top of not being able to process their emotions, and being slow to develop they're having anxiety about things that really don't affect them day to day. Right. So they have a lot of external projection about things to worry about. They're worrying about things out here. And it affects them in here. So number three, so they're isolated. And because they lack um trusted adults, right? Only 34% feel safe talking to adults. Almost 1 in 3. Give me 3 Gen Z, one of them feels safe talking to adults. And you've seen this, perhaps. You've seen how Gen Z operates. You try to have a conversation with one of them. It feels a little bit awkward, all right? It's like pulling teeth. And they're very uncomfortable about speaking about their mental health. Although, and I'll get to the positives, Gen Z is one of them. Gen Z, they're into therapy, right? They're cool with that. So many feel fear of burdening friends or being judged or leading to emotional withdrawal. The pandemic intensified this isolation, cutting off social development during critical years. So yeah, those 2 to 3 years of masking up, saying stay home, don't go outside. Those are really during Gen Z's really some of the really formative years for some of them on the later end. And also even some of the ones in their late 20s and 30s, for a lot of people, those are really your coming to age years, your late 20s, your early 30s, when you're really making that transition into real adulthood. But then we were told to stay inside, mask up, don't go outside, stay safe. All right. And so number 4, victimhood and culture, in identity fragmentation. So there's a growing cultural narrative that elevates victimhood. Again, I keep saying this, I've been talking about it for a while, as a form of identity and moral authority, right? And it's not even people from my generation, because we're inundated with these messages of people around, all the media, whether it's social media or news media, keep telling us that we're powerless, we're victims, we need a savior who's not Jesus Christ. Your savior is Republicans, the Democrats, the supremacists, this medicine, this pill, right? We're always being told we're a victim and something else is our savior other than God. So this growing cultural narrative elevates the victim as a form of identity and worship. So that's how you identify. You truly identify as this victim, this powerless victim. That becomes who you are. That's who you project, and that affects you negatively. So while this can validate real trauma, it also can trap individuals in this grievance cycle. I was talking about this years ago when I talked about, the typical city black female liberal woman, a consummate victim, always talking about how she's affected by slavery. Like she just got out of it like she's 400 years old or something, or she just got out of it, right? Everyone's out to get her. Never let her raise a black child by herself, because especially a black boy, because he'll grow up to be a victim and sissified, not how to be a man. So and it's a cycle, right? Grievance is a cycle. If you don't truly come to believe who your king is, Jesus Christ, and that you're not a victim, you're a victor, because he won all the victory for us. So, and again, identity politics, hyper fragmented online communities, they just reinforce these echo chambers of resentment. So once you're a victim, you get caught in this victim cycle. The first thing you do is you go to Twitter, you go to Facebook, you go to these online communities, True Social, whatever it is, maybe, I don't know, community out in Missouri, where you build a community where everyone who looks like you and believes like you, right? You keep everyone else out, right? So you fragment yourself so that you can remain in your echo chambers, right? So you never get any diversity of thoughts, right? You're just around people who think like you. And that becomes dangerous. And so then there's a loss of meaning, a spiritual disconnection. So traditional sources of meaning, faith, family, community are often absent and are distrusted. Many Gen Z feel adrift, lacking a coherent worldview or spiritual anchor. Some report that faith communities help combat isolation, but may have drifted away from those support. So, and this is why you see Gen Z. They the whole some of them, we have some, anecdotes, right, of young people coming to mass, right? Some families, some places we see higher numbers, confirmation, converts, things like this. But largely these are nuns, right? They have no religion. Right? They don't, for all the aforementioned reasons. They don't trust adults. Adults are in charge of the church. Right? They're slow to develop their emotions. So very emotional religions like the protest movement, the Protestantism, which is all emotion, right? They really can't connect to that. Not at all. The isolation they experienced, they're comfortable there. They're comfortable in the digital space. Coming into a church setting with people, you talk to a lot of Gen Zers, that sign of peace is stressful. Shaking somebody's hand. Go talk to a Gen Zer. That's probably one of the most stressful parts of the mass for them. They start sweating. Right? They all hate it. So yeah, so the community aspect. So, and it's hard to call them countercultural, right? Because I think they're the culture. They're the new culture that's coming. Ooh, I got him. Ha ha! Cook that dog. Cook them. All right. Go tell your cousins about me. I cook nets. All right. Anyway, sorry about that. I get excited about cooking those things. Where was I at? Yeah, so let's talk about the positive. So I kind of tore down Gen Z. And so, yeah, so this is why you see them. So it's not the transgender thing, I don't think. That's why we don't, the prevalence of these school shooters. It's just the culture. There's a lot of negative things in this culture that the digital culture that's really affecting them and harming them. So that's what we have. So that's the one thing we have to look out for. But I think on the flip side, though, I think one thing that really helps Gen Z is, like I said, they're more open to therapy. That's a very positive thing. Some of them are emotionally literate if they can take all the emotions and the emojis that they share, if they can translate that into real space and real time. they do tend to be emotionally literate, but it takes work translating emojis into real life. Even though they're like emotionally affected by like things that don't affect them, Palestine and all these things, climate change, so to speak, uh, they do have a sense of wanting to make the world better, right? I mean, they do care. They do want the world to be a better place. So they're not doomed. I just think they're overwhelmed. They're not doomed, right? They're just overwhelmed and they really don't know how to process emotions and stress and things like that and rejection, right? So I say what they need isn't more outrage or even diagnosis, but really connection and purpose and hope, right? They need more orientation. Right. And so here, all right, so here comes, so if you're a Catholic evangelist, if you're a priest, if you're a bishop, right, if you work on some sort of committee at the diocese or in your parish, right? So how do you reach these people, right? So you know all about them now. You know some of the things they're stressors, some of the things that they're going through. And if you're hearing this, she's like, well, man, yeah, the mass is the solution, right? Even though they have stressors there to sign a peace and things like that, yeah, there's going to be some stressors there for them. But the solution to their problem, of course, is communion, right? And true communion with Christ Jesus. And it's really interesting that everything that the Gen Z is going through, the Gen Z doesn't know how close they are to Christ Jesus, right? Gen Z is closer to Christ in a way than every generation before, because everything that they're going through, Christ went through. So Gen Z feels very lonely. And so Christ enters the world alone in the womb, right? And he spends his life in loneliness in a way because there's no one like him. True, the admirable exchange, God becoming man so man can become like God. God is forming us and shaping us, gives the Holy Spirit to be like him, right? We're being made to be the imago Dei, right? So we are becoming like God. He's drawing us to that, but there was never anyone truly like him, right? Fully God, fully man. So there was a part of him that was just always alone. Right? Gen Z feels abandoned. They don't they don't trust adults. They don't, there's no emotional connection there, right? So there's an abandonment. They feel abandoned by adults because of that. Christ is close to them in this way because there's the abandonment Christ suffered. In the garden of agony, right, there's in a sense where he on the cross where he recites the psalm, why you've forsaken me. So Christ is close to Gen Z in this way. And the suffering, right? All the suffering Gen Z goes through. Right? Who suffered more than Christ? So Christ is very close to his generation. Right? My definition of suffering is when things aren't going your way. When things aren't going your way, the way you want them, you suffer. I don't care what it is. Your luggage didn't make it. Your luggage is still in Chicago. You're in Jersey for some reason. That's suffering. Not just because you're in Jersey, but because your luggage isn't there with you, right? That's suffering. That's high level suffering. Suffering is when things aren't going your way. But Christ is close to Gen Z is suffering a lot. Climate change, Palestine, you name it, whatever issue, whatever grievance that the world's telling them to have, and they're buying into it because they're in a digital space, and in digital space, it's all grievance. That's all the digital space is. Here's a new grievance for you today. Every day you wake up in digital space, someone's telling you something to be grieved about. I don't care where you get it from. MSNBC, Drudge Report, Fox News, Breitbart, Bongino Report. I don't care where you get your news from. They're giving you a grievance. And you guys know me. One of the first places I go to when I go online is cleveland.com to see what's going on with the Browns, right? It's a grievance there. I admit that. I'm not immune to grievances. Just because I talk about how dumb they are, right? I grieve a lot about the Cleveland Browns. Trust me. But that's all the digital space has for you. And so, Christ is close to Gen Z in that way, and to all of us, because even in the liturgy of the Catholic Mass, so what? And so to break out of the grievance thing, what the liturgy teaches is the whole procession. Right? So in the liturgy, everything is a procession, and this is a reflection of the world. So and in liturgy, in the Mass, we're always processing towards the altar, whether you're coming in, whether it's the communion line, whether it's the gift offering, whether it's the altar service, whether it's the priest, whether it's the lector. Everyone is processing to the altar, right? Everyone's processing to where Christ is. And so that's how life is. And that's what liturgical time is about. We're always processing towards Easter, right? We're always processing towards Calvary. We're always on our way to do something. It's always ordinary time until we get to the destination we reach, and there's a different, then we're doing something there. So we're always moving towards Christ. So this is how life should be. Whatever we're doing, dentist appointment, we're going to the doctor, wherever we're going. I'm going to this destination here, but what I'm doing is I'm processing. Everything's a procession. We should think of our movements. Our watch is telling us how many movements we have. We should think of all that as a procession towards Christ, even if it's to the grocery store. That's to Christ as well, because you're doing there. You're taking care of your family. You're feeding yourself. You're taking care of your body, taking care of your gifts. You're staying healthy. You're processing to work where you're going to go use your gifts there. Right. Everything is a procession. I'm about to go see my mom. Well, it's good. You're going to honor your mother and your father. Right. I'm going to go take, my wife out to dinner. Okay. You're honoring your wife, you're protecting your wife. Everything is a procession. Everything in life, everything that is good. Right. And so if we're processing towards something that's not good, then we're not processing towards Christ. We're processing towards Satan. And so that's the answer to Gen Z, because Gen Z really doesn't know what they're doing. They're doing it in the digital space, because the digital space is just really pulling them in different types of directions, having to focus on all these grievances. They don't know what they're doing. And so when it comes to the Mass, they're learning that procession and direction is one way towards their eternal destination. All right, the New Jerusalem. All right. So that's the resolution for Gen Z and everything that they're suffering, these bad tendencies that lead to self-harm or harm of others. Like I said, because there's a very thin line between the two. Very thin line. But the resolution in that is, of course, the liturgy of the Mass. And of course, this is really the Protestant issue. Why Protestantism is really just doomed to fail, because Protestantism doesn't have a true liturgy. Right? They don't have a procession towards something that is real. Right? Even those traditions that they have something that looks like the Mass, like an Anglican, it's not a true procession, because it doesn't really process towards the real presence of Christ. Right? It's a fake procession. It's processing to something like Christ, but not truly Christ. Right? So only Catholicism, right? And we could say maybe the Orthodox in a way, right? Because they have a valid sacrament, the Holy Eucharist. We can say, those are only true, the only things that are true that teaches us how to navigate this world, because that's what Gen Z is suffering, whether it's their emotions, their relationships, their interactions. They don't know how to navigate. So what the liturgy teaches us, if we take the liturgy out into the world, as we ought to, but the liturgy teaches us pedagogically and repetitionally is how to navigate. That's what procession is. How do I navigate? It's like a roadmap, right? But that it doesn't change. It just moves in one direction towards Christ, right? You don't need to pull your Google Maps for this one. How do I navigate this life? Well, you navigate it towards Christ. That's how you navigate towards Christ. And so that's where we are, and that's how we got there, and that's really the solution, I think, to the problem. It sounds rather simplistic. Hey, go to Mass. I'm sorry it sounds so simple. Imagine that the answer hasn't changed in 2,000 years. My bad. I started off this podcast and I said, I'm going to say something totally new and different than what everyone else is saying. And I end up saying the same thing we've been saying for 2,000 years. Let me get to your comments. This is David L. Gray.
To the world, blessings and peace, liturgical light in a cultural space, cutting through the clutter is David L. Gray, in pursuit of truth the Dominican way. From Warren to the world, blessings and peace, liturgical light in a cultural space, cutting through the clutter is David L. Gray, in pursuit of truth the Dominican way.
It's David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray. That light, share and sub if you please. Hit that like, share and sub if you please. David L. Gray. It's David L. Gray. Hit that like, share and sub if you please. Hit that like, share and sub if you please.
From Warren to the world, blessings and peace, liturgical light in a cultural space, cutting through the clutter is David L. Gray, in pursuit of truth the Dominican way.
It's David L. Gray back here. Let me get to your comments. Appreciate you guys staying in here with me. Let me see some of the things that you were talking about while I was over here yapping and running my mouth. Marmar is in the house. She says, I don't understand how these 20-something people have all the time and privacy to write diaries and buy guns. Shaking my head. Yeah. I don't have a clue how. All right. I still don't know how to get the money. Some of them who don't have jobs. Like, how do you get all this money to buy guns? Right? You have a sponsor? Is that your mom? Rose says, Lord Jesus, bless all the children of the parish of initiation. Help us build up your church. We need you desperately. Amen. Brianna says, this is the first time I've seen any parts of this manifesto. I don't know how I feel about it. He was very troubled, but to hurt others is so evil. To go from apologizing to killing is beyond me. Yeah, it's hard to process. His diary manifesto then to his actions is, man, it's hard to process. I agree. Christine from Eternal Life Plan, a wonderful podcast. She says, in Minnesota, parents' hands are tied because of the laws. They can't stop or fight a child transitioning. Wow. Yeah, because he's 17. You assume that if he was going to do it himself, he just have done it the next year. But he does it when he's 17, when he's still like legally a child. Milton Wing saying we should protect churches and schools, banks, and government buildings. We should protect churches and schools. Yeah. Banks and government buildings are not more important. Yeah, man, that'd be amazing if we had to get to that point where we have to be like some of these countries who have security patrolling their churches inside and outside. Armed security, rather. I think a lot of churches, even run those Protestant churches, have ushers or whatever security walking around, but not armed. What if we get to armed? That'd be wild. Angela Don says, I appreciate you always thinking outside the box. It's refreshing to have intelligent commentary. Thank you. I try not to be too much of a reactionary. So appreciate that. And she adds, I would say active martyrs since they're attending mass, which is sacrifice in and of itself. Yeah. Because I said passive in a way that, because I was thinking of the martyrs who know who they're about to die, right? Versus that's what I think I meant when I said passive, right? But I see what you're saying as far as active, because they were truly worshiping, even as much, but in the same time, but they were killed because they were Christian, right? And so I think that's part of the delineation there. Like, okay, what makes a martyr who dies in church? Well, did the person kill them because of their faith? Did they suffer because of their faith? So I think in this case, yeah, absolutely. Jeremiah says, didn't he draw a picture of him looking in a mirror with a demon reflection? Yeah, I think that's what that was. Now that you say it, I didn't know what I was looking at. But yeah, I think that's what I was yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, based on what he said in his manifesto, I mean, he thinks he's yeah, he says I'm evil. He says that about himself, that I'm evil. So he he's suffering from that, and he's not Martin Luther, but remember Martin Luther had the same type of issue in a way that he couldn't really understand why God could love someone like him. And his suffering, like his answers to that question caused him to amend the Bible, change a few words, come up with some weird theological ideas. Like, oh, it's just grace alone. I don't have to do anything. God just loves me because of me. I'm a piece of crap, but Christ covers me. Came up with this weird theology, became a religion. Right. So that's how he processed his, understood that he was a bad person. Couldn't take a leap to say, oh, God loves me in spite of me. And so, yeah, this Robin person is like suffering, man. I'm an evil person. I'm bad. There's nothing can fix me. There must not be a God because someone like me exists. That's what Robin would say. And so the outcome is always death. The outcome is always suffering, no matter what direction you take, whether it's self-harm or harm of others, theological harm, mental harm, physical harm. All right. It's all types. It's just death, different forms of death. So the rejection of God and his love always leads to death, whether encouraging others through your actions and words or physical actions. Marmar says, I'm sure Robin had been taking medications for his transitioning, especially hormones and probably surgeries. All those synthetic drugs. Yeah, they do have a mental effect, don't they? And it's been speculated that children fed the fast food, artificial food today are going to adulthood with mental and physical disabilities due to nutrition. Yeah, I believe that. Gen Z is a term used to refer to people 97 to 2012. Yep. Yeah, they do have low emotional IQ. That's a good term. Yeah, why is they're enabled? Yeah, it's a lot of that, man. Parents, we don't know how. I think a lot of parents struggle with Gen Z. I think they do because they're different. They're different because they're born into this digital age. Dan says, I'm a Gen Xer and saw what was starting to happen with the internet. Yeah, I didn't. I wouldn't say that. I've been caught off guard by this whole thing. I really now just started processing that people have been born into this. Like they don't know what a cordless phone is, or a cord with a phone, or a remote or remember, we didn't have remote controls to turn the TV. We had that box that had a wire connected to the TV. Remember that? it's so much that I'm just now processing that, like the speed of everything and the instant gratification that they're used to. It's scary. And Brianna says they have no coping mechanisms. The word no was that's true. That's true. And Brianna, you know I have that problem with Olivia. Like I don't my youngest, I think all my daughters. But Olivia, yeah, she's Gen Z, late Gen Z. Yeah. My bad. It's hard for me to tell the daughters no. It is. It's very hard. I just got in trouble today with one daughter for what I did for her sister. Like, Dad, you gotta stop doing that, Dad. Dad, you gotta stop doing that. She has to learn how to take care of herself, Dad. What am I supposed to do? But yeah. I mean, it's a balance, you know. How much do you want to let your kids suffer? It's hard for a dad with daughters. It is. I admit that. Thanks, Brianna. Yeah, just go to mass. Just breathe advice. I wish I invented that. I didn't. All right. And Marmar, yeah, I still have to get on. I still got a note here to check out this Father Alaluma. So I got a note written down in my notes. Hey, I got to check out him. So I'm still going to do that for you. Yeah. And mainstream media is never, ever. There's no money in telling the truth, right? If they could figure out how to make money off of telling the truth, they would. They really would. Brian says, but it's Olivia. Your girls are angels. They are harder on each other than Dad is. Yeah, my dad and uncles are like that with the girls. Yeah. That's wild. All right, my friends. Thanks for tuning in to the live stream. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a blessed weekend. If you're going anywhere for Labor Day, be safe out there in them streets. And yeah, let's keep these people in Minneapolis in our prayers, and pray for the souls that have faithfully departed. And let's just keep an eye on each other, and let's just keep checking in with our Gen Z and all our kids. Let's just keep checking in with them, and let's see how that goes. All right. But until then, till next time, blessings and peace to you and to yours. It's David O'Gray.
To the world, blessings and peace. Liturgical light in a cultural space. Cutting through the clutter, David L. Gray. We pursue the truth.